@bean. Under @bean method, you will be having your data source object creation or JDBC template creation or named parameter JDBC template creations. So these objects you need to construct under @bean method so that that object will be created under your IOC and it can be auto wired. Then you will be auto wiring your DAO here. So once you auto wired DAO, service methods can connect with DAO, and usually controller will connect with service auto wired service class. Finally, you can able to talk till DAO. DAO can insert into database. Now coming to ORM till JDBC module we learned. There they given JDBC template and named parameter template. Coming to Spring ORM. Guys, am I audible? That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Coming to Spring ORM, as I said, they given configuration class, or I'll tell you the architecture, okay, how Hibernate will work so that you can understand. So they give an integration class for Spring, like local session factory bean. Here they given two classes, factory bean classes. Okay. Local session factory bean or annotation session factory bean classes. Local session factory bean or annotation session factory bean classes they have provided for integrating with the DAO using local session factory bean or annotation session factory bean. We can create a session factory object that is important for Hibernate. These two classes will produce which object? Session factory. Session factory object. Okay, factory for sessions. It will produce sessions. Session factory will produce sessions. Sessions are nothing but similar to connection. They will help you to do CRUD operations. So from local session factory bean or annotation session factory bean, we will get session factory. From this session factory, we can use sessions. So why these factory bean classes are for? They are for session factory. So what session factory will help? How session factory will help? By providing sessions here, it will help. So why I need sessions? Session means using the session you can able to do CRUD operations, save, update, delete, all predefined methods given in session. Under the session class, you have save method, update, delete, get method, load method, right? Lot of methods has been given under the session class so that we can utilize them for CRUD operations. Okay. So finally, end of the day, when you want to use Spring ORM, here you need to auto wire @auto wired session factor. Session factory you need to auto wire. So who will produce this session factory? Local session factory bean or annotation session factory bean. They are the integration factory bean classes will provide session factory as the output. So that session factory you can auto wire anywhere, which means you need to create this local session factory bean. You need to create this local session factory bean here under configurations, right? Under @bean method local session factory bean or annotation session factory bean classes we will create here, so that they will produce session factory. Okay, not too complex. Just here we will place Hibernate configuration code on, not from the Spring. hibernate logic only we put here, and the rate at the rate and at the rate bean method, right? So that will produce session factory. We will use session factory in our DO classes for CRUD operations. Session factory will provide sessions. Okay, finally, end of the day, to do hibernate CRUD operations, I need a session object. Session object that will come from session factory. That will come from session factory. So if you try to understand hibernate architecture, right? So when you start hibernate, hibernate will create a session factory object first. Session factory is similar like connection pool. Session factory is something like connection pool. If you try to compare with connection pool, right? It is similar like connection pool. Session factory object is similar like connection pool. So it will hold a lot of sessions based on your configuration. Let's say if you mention 15 connections required for doing parallel CRUD operations by multiple users. So it will place all that connections into session factory. Okay, from your database, it will bring the mentioned number of connections and it will create pool under during application startup. It will bring all the connections here. Fetch connections. It will fetch connections during application startup. It will fetch all the connections and it will keep it into session factory. Now, whenever end user try to do any CRUD operation, right, using Hibernate, so you may have controller service from servlets or Spring, whatever it is. Finally, DAO, if I write here, if I write a DAO here, this DAO need to collect, DAO may have, we have a lot of methods here, right? Save method, update, delete, select, all the methods we can have here. Yeah, yes. Why? Because it holds sessions. It will produce you sessions. Okay. Yeah. Session factory holds sessions. So it will have sessions. From this session factory, you can get session here. Okay. So each method needs a session object. Why? Whenever I want to save data or update data or delete data. Okay. So end user submitting data from form. So here he have all the form properties. So he's submitting data from there. Usually if it is a JDBC, we will get the data and we will combine data with the SQL. Right? In JDBC, we write code like data plus SQL we will write to insert. But in Hibernate, what you need to do, first you need to put your form data into this form data. You have to put it into bean class. You have to put it into bean class. You have to put this into bean class. Okay, like student bean, employee bean, whichever table you have on the database, right? Let's say this form is for employee, you may have employee table on database. If it is employee form, I have employee table here, emp table. On this employee table, I want to insert data. This is my employee form, employee registration form. So from here, I'm submitting employee data that I need to populate into employee bean class. So there you need to have right properties, right? You need to have right properties here. Let's say from here, name, email, address you are sending. You need to have same fields here, name, email, address fields, and you have to store data into this bean first, and you have to pass this bean to your DAO. You will be passing this bean to DAO CRUD operation method, save or update or delete. There to insert data into table, there to insert data into table or delete, update on the table, right? To execute your CRUD operations on this table, you have to use this session here. Okay, first I'll get the data from front end. To the step one, I'll get data from there. I'll keep it into bean, then I'll send it to DAO. So then DAO, before executing final step, or as a final step, it will execute it on database. Between the second and fourth, you need to use this session factory. From this session factory, you need to collect a session. You need to collect a session here, right? You need to get a session from session factory, and you have to use session methods. In session, we have predefined methods like save, update, delete methods. Into that method, you have to pass your bean here. You have to pass your bean here. Session dot save, session dot update, or session dot delete. Such methods we have. For update, even update method. If you want to delete, delete method. So a lot of Hibernate methods we have for doing CRUD operations. Just you need to pass same bean here. You need to pass bean here so that it will save it on database. So this is the third step. You need to get session. You need to get session. Once you get the session, you have to execute CRUD operation. Okay. So just simple. Once you build the session factory, right, doing all CRUD operations are simple. Just you need to get data in the form of bean, and this bean is already mapped to your table. So definitely here, when you try to save or update or delete, your session need to understand on which table this data need to be inserted or updated or deleted. Just simply if I give object a bean object to session, it can't go and insert or update or delete. Definitely it need help to understand on which table this object need to be executed. So you given data in the form of object, it need to finally save it into table. Object, table. Between it needs mapping. So that mapping either you can do via annotations or XML file. So bean to finally end of the day it is going to insert bean data into table. You need mapping between them. You need mapping between them. So by using that mapping, Hibernate will understand. Okay, you will provide mapping here. So using that mapping, Hibernate will understand. Bean via mapping only it will understand how to insert on a table. So that's where they named it ORL, Object Database Relation via mapping. Okay, so yeah, then what is the go? Need to go with the Spring. You are not doing nothing. I mean anything with Spring. Hibernate is only doing it. So just for integration. Okay. So for integration only they have given one class. Alone Hibernate can't able to handle end to end, right? Hibernate is specific for DAO. Okay. So for DAO it helps. So we are using it. We are using it for DAO only. Okay. So the remaining part Spring only will do. Integration classes only Spring provided. Otherwise, Spring is doing nothing. Spring is not against Hibernate. Hibernate is a beautiful framework, right? Yeah. Yeah, it is having a lot of advantages if you go through Hibernate, right? So Hibernate will give you a lot of advantages like object directly you can insert on table, delete, or select with easy simplified methods. As a developer, you need not to have much SQL skills. Apart from that, caching features, auto DDL features, primary key generator features, no compile time exceptions. Lot of advantages we have in Hibernate. As I told you, right? I'll share Hibernate material. and please go through the videos also, okay, if you have time. Otherwise, ignore this completely, okay. Just listen how Hibernate integration is working, and it will be more easier to you to understand data JPA later, okay. But this is not too complex to understand, okay. Nothing. Hibernate finally working on a session methods, okay. How we will get session? Via session factory. Session factory is nothing but a connection pool, okay. Session factory is nothing but a connection pool. It is having all the connections internally. So we mentioned in a Hibernate configuration file this many connections I need, so that many connections it will create under session factory. So whenever you get session, it will provide you one connection object for you. So you do CRUD operations. Finally, when you, I didn't understand. You can you elaborate that boiler code problem or issue? How you will get? Mhm. Here also you need to here also you need to close the sessions properly. Okay. So if you use plain Hibernate, you have to handle that. Okay. When you use Hibernate template, they given template classes also to simplify again Hibernate, like JDBC template. Okay, there it avoids all the issues. Okay, you need not to worry about resource cleanup also. But for first step one example, you need to learn. First example is Spring with core Hibernate. Okay, basic Hibernate I'll use here. Core Hibernate with Spring direct level use. Later I'll show you second example with the Spring with Hibernate template given in Spring API. Spring Hibernate template with the Hibernate integration I'll show you. Hibernate template is going to integrate with the Hibernate. So third example, you can see Hibernate template. This must be enough. Okay. Yeah. So in data JPA, we will see other examples. With the core Hibernate integration, with the Hibernate template also, we will see both examples. Directly Hibernate I'll use. Without Hibernate, Spring methods also I can use. Okay. If we explore through examples, okay. Once again, I showed you right how to download examples. So just go to this link, Hibernate ORM, download all the jar files and examples here, okay. So you'll get all the examples and jar files, and you can go through videos from YouTube. More than 30 plus videos we have. Just you can do simple fast forward and see the importance of each concept. Okay, need not to spend much time, but to get the basic knowledge, if you at least see first 10-15 videos, you will understand overall about Hibernate. I did right. I have shared it. Let me share again. So basic CRUD operation example I have shown you, right? Once again, let me show you how it is functioning. First, you need to create a bean class. You have to start with the bean class. So this bean should be equivalent to your table. Okay. I have a database table with ID, name, email address. So whatever number of columns you have in your database, that many properties you need to declare here. Table is having ID, name, email address. So just keep the similar properties with the Java data types. In database side, you have maybe integer, varchar2 for array. For MySQL, it may be int, varchar, varchar, varchar. For DB2 or database, it may be different data type. But you need not to bother about all the data types of database. Just create a bean class, a poso class, simple poso class with all the columns, whichever you have in database side. Okay, ID, name, email address I have in my database table. Just keep them here as a properties. So we mapped this table to, okay, first step. Once you create project, right, first just to create a bean to achieve CRUD operations on, let's say I have this table RBO experts. On this RBO experts table, I want to do CRUD operations. So to do CRUD operations on this RBO experts table, how many columns I have? ID, name, email, address columns I have. So then ID, name, email, address, properties I have in bean class. Create a bean equivalent to your table. Okay. With the setters and getters. Create poso class with the setter and getter. Setter and getter are mandatory. Okay. Setter and getter. If you don't want setter getter here, at least use annotation here. Lombok data annotation or at the rate setter at the rate getter annotation. Okay. End of the day, they also will provide getters and setters here. Okay. You created student poso class. What next? Create a mapping file. If you are not using annotations, right, you need to create a mapping file which tells Hibernate on which table the data need to be inserted. When you do final step here, as a fourth step here, when you pass your bean as an input to Hibernate, it should execute on a table, right? Database may hold lot of tables. So on which table this data need to execute? I give an employee bean. This employee bean need to execute it on employee table. How your session understands that when you give employee bean, how it will understand that employee bean need to insert into employee table? Via this mapping file. So the mapping file will describe, it tells to your session on which table it need to be inserted. This is my student bean. This bean, whenever I try to use in your CRUD operations, we are telling to Hibernate, whenever I use this bean in CRUD operation methods, you please insert it on or update it on or delete it on or select from this table or be expert table. We are telling to Hibernate, for this bean, you need to execute all CRUD operations on this table. And what columns I have here in student table? I have a lot of columns: ID, name, email address. Out of these, ID column I mentioned it for primary key. When you use ID tag, right, ID tag meant for primary key. Let's say email, if you want to use as a primary key, you need to mention email here. For now, we are using only ID as a primary key in our table. Primary key means unique column, unique identity column. So for now, we are using simple ID as a primary key, same column I'm adding here: ID, name, email, address. Sometimes your bean properties, here I am using ID, name, email, address. It, it, it is need not to same case with the table. Table may have different column names here. For ID, you may have student ID or RBU expert ID, expert name, expert email, expert address. Column names may be different here. In that scenario, you need to do what? After mentioning your bean property here, you need to use column attribute here. One more attribute given, column. If database and bean column names are different, then you can mention them here. In your table, the table column name, whatever column you have in your table. So the table column name, you can mention here. You can mention your table column names. But as of now, we are maintaining same consistency, right? I need not to mention column here. So you can remove. So same properties I'm using. And ID mentioned for primary key. So we are clearly telling, while inserting student data into this experts table, consider my ID as a primary key. Of course, we even created RB expert table, ID as a primary key. Okay. So via this mapping file, it understands. Whenever we pass bean, it understands on which table need to be inserted. Okay. Now, one more thing we need is session factory. This thing we can do. We can create a poser class and we can put some data into it, isn't it? We can create simple poser class and we can hold data into it. Later, to do CRUD operation, I need session factory object also. How you will construct? For session factory is nothing but connection pool, as I said, right? Session factory is nothing but connection pool. It will fetch all the connections from your database and it will hold. So that connection pool properties you need to configure somewhere into a file. So we'll use Oracle configuration file or Hibernate configuration. There we create all the properties. My database, driver name, URL, username, password, and how many connections you want. And on which database you are going to execute. You need to give idea to Hibernate. What is your database type? Otherwise, while executing same method, right? Internally it will execute SQLs. Okay, you need not to write in the form of SQL only. End of the data. End of the day, the data is going to insert or update or delete via SQL only. You know, right? Sometimes SQL queries are different from database to database. So to understand on which database it is executing, you need to mention dialect. Dialect in the sense it's a kind of language to the Hibernate. Dialect. We are saying, hey Hibernate, you are executing on Arkill database. So use Arkill dialect. So via Arkill dialect, it will generate queries. If it is a MySQL, you need to give MySQL dialect. If it is a DB2, DB2 dialect, like that. And one more property, HBM to DDL dot auto. Hibernate mapping file to DDL. Do you want to execute these columns? Do you want to execute DDL, create a table? If this table is not exist on your database, do you want to create these columns on database with this table name? Do you want to create this table? That you need to mention here. Hibernate is asking, do you want to create table? I said no, just use update. Means if I have any additional column, if I add, so far I don't have column like 4. So I need 4 number column also. If I mention it here, with this property update, what it will do, it will execute DDL query, alter DDL query. Alter means one new column is added to your table. In case you don't have table at all on database, something I'll create here, RBU students. Yeah. RBU STD. I don't have this table at all on my database. So in that scenario also you can use update. What it will do, if table not exist, it can create this table also. With the ID name email address column, this table also can be created. So here we have many properties, forget about them. Just always try to use update or validate. Already I have table. I don't want to create any table automatically. Just I want to validate. So this table, in that case, this table must be exist in your database. So already I have table in this database, RB experts. Just it will compare whether ID, name, email address columns are there or not when you mention validate. Maybe in real time you may use validate. You may use validate. You know, in recent application, in recent application, my teammates, they use it simply update. They use it simply update. Experts, they are experts, okay, but they don't know properly Hibernate configuration. They used update, and we have tables. So many tables. Each table is having 70-80 columns. So this they used update, and table is having 70-80 columns. Usually the tables carried from almost 10-15 years. It's a old application. Database side, they have a lot of columns. Yeah. So lot of columns. Mhm. Table. That is what I'm saying. Okay. So I have table already. I have table RBU expert with ID name, email address. I have already table. For that table, I have properly properties also here. Properly I configured it. You are a good developer, so you understand the table, how many columns you have, and properly you created that many fields only in your bean, and that bean you mapped here. So everything went fine. Okay, so update will do nothing because properly everything you mapped. But let's say you went one more step ahead and you added some extra properties which are really not required in table. Nobody is asked you to add, but you created, okay, this is my bean for calculations, I'll add one more property. Okay, some details property, maybe it is not required. You created it, you added this property here, and the same property you added from this mapping file. What it will do, this details column also it will alter your table and add one more extra column here, though your business is not required, accidentally or somehow you created it. In case of XML mapping, okay, you need to come here, you need to map it. But in case of annotations, right, we don't create even any mapping file, just one at the rate entity annotation we put. And sometimes, people usually they used to add so many columns, extra columns apart from database required columns. In that case, what will happen, this extra columns also these extra columns also are going to create on table. So if you want to avoid that problem, right, you need to use validate here. So careful, okay, careful while using this. Second time I saw a big problem with the create or update things. Okay, so first time while I was working on the first application, I used create. So client created a database with all tables and test data. I forget that, and I didn't understand the importance of the data on the existing tables. Usually clients will, you know, already if they have tables, databases, they will provide a lot of tables with the data. With the data they will provide for testing purpose, real-time data or similar to real-time data. So if you forget and put a create option here, what it will do, let's say they provided 100 tables with the data, 100 tables with data if they provided, accidentally you mentioned create here, and you have all 100 bean classes, 100 mapping files. But when you start your Hibernate application, what it will do, it will drop all these 100 tables from your database. It will delete them first. Then it will recreate fresh tables. By that time, you will lose your data. Whatever data for testing purpose given, you will be losing it. So careful while using it, okay? So while using Spring JPA, data JPA also, right? Remember this property. Careful, okay? Careful. So use update. Update will do less harm, which means update will not going to delete your tables. In case if you create a fresh bean which is not having table in database, it may create only that bean table. Or if you add any extra columns, it may update that extra columns. That's it. It may alter. That's it. Otherwise, update is not going to give much impact. If you use validate, that is well and good. Validate is not going to create or it is not going to drop. It won't do anything. Just it will compare always whether all your beans properly mapped to your tables or not. Okay, if you go through videos, okay, for each and everything I explained clearly, okay, it helps you a lot. Okay, now for session factory, we understand for this session factory creation. Okay, for this session factory creation, we need a configuration file. So under this configuration file, we given database properties, dialect to understand on which database it is executing, and DDL, do you want to create table or just alter, just you want to compare. So you can put that option here, create or validate or update, show SQL is true. So what this property will do, Hibernate generates some SQLs, right, for your CRUD operations. Finally, it will generate SQLs. So those SQLs, whichever it is generating, that you can see, it will show them to you on console. Okay, under your console, it is going to show you all that SQL queries, so that it helps you to understand how it executed SQL on database. Okay, maybe for your inspection, how properly executed the query or not, properly generated or not, you can easily understand. Okay, the same thing is happening here. If you see, first we are reading configuration file, Hibernate configuration file to build the session factor. Okay, let's see until line number 15. Okay, so we are reading configuration file, something looking like your application context only, right? So this is also container. Hibernate came with its own self container configuration. Okay, so this configuration container reading your Oracle configuration file, whichever we created. So there we have all the connection properties, connection string and DDL properties. So it will load that all the properties into configuration file. Okay, so what it will load, by the time it will reach us to line number 14, it will load your Oracle configuration file, and Oracle configuration file is attached with your mapping file also. Poser class mapped to which table, that mapping file also given. So both will be loaded. Both will be loaded into your configuration. So now your configuration know about your database connection properties, and your configuration class know about mapping files also. So now whenever you execute configuration dot build session factory, it will start creating this connection pool. It will fetch connections and it will create connection when you call build session factory. So your connection pool is ready here. Now to do CRUD operations, as I said, you need a session object. How you will get session object? Using session factory. Using the session factory, if you call open session, it will provide you session object. Session factory dot open session means it will provide one connection from there. Okay, cool. Once getting session, how I can insert data? Whatever data you are getting from the end user, keep it into Pozo class, keep it into your Pozo class. It is having setters, right? So use the setter methods to hold your data. So via setter methods, I'm assigning all the fields. Finally, I'm using this session and dot save method. Session dot save. Bus. This data fields data it will collect ID, name, email address fields, 111 ABC at Gmail HYD. All these fields it will fetch values, and the save method internally generate a insert query. How it will generate? When you call save method, it will understand first, okay, this student been mapped to which table. Okay, RBO experts is the table, so I need to generate an insert query. It is smart, right? So it will generate insert query, insert into table, values, ID, name. Internally it generates this query, named parameter, named query, it will generate name, email address. Okay, what are all the values of this ID, name, email address? Already you given ID, name, email address. So it will fetch each property from this student object. It will assign ID here, name here, email here, address here, and it will execute finally end of the day this query. It executes. You need not to write this query, you need not to assign all this stuff, you need not to do anything. All this stuff will be done by your Hibernate query engine. Okay, here Hibernate will use query engine to generate SQL query, and those SQL queries will be executed end of the day on your tables. Smart. So you need not to bother about either insert query or update query or select query. Everything is simple. Just you create session factory, get a session from session factory, and execute your CRUD operations. Save, update, delete, select, anything. It helps you. Okay, hope you understand, right? Basically how it is functioning. I'll give you end-to-end example. Okay, one more web project we will create. Okay, student management system, something we created earlier, right? Now let me create new project, dynamic web project. Okay, next we will create employee management system. Okay, employee management system, EMS. Finish. Just a dynamic web project created, employee management system. Okay. So we need a lot of classes here. Front end I need, and back end classes I need. Particularly for DAO, I need Hibernate. Okay. So let's code your Hibernate first here. Okay. So let's code Hibernate mappings stuff here. So go to build path, configure build path, add external jars. Okay. So all these jar files are available in Spring library also. I have added them into Spring library also. So Spring and Hibernate together we have in Spring jar files. Spring. So right. So it is a web project. Add one set into class path. Don't forget to copy and put it into library section also. Now let's start with first Hibernate coding. Okay. Hibernate coding means nothing, just you need to create bean class first. Okay. So let me create bean class. com.rbu.employee management system dot model package. I'm creating a model package. Create your bean. As of now, I don't have any employee table. Okay. In database, we don't have any employee table. We'll be creating it. Okay. So here I'll create bean employee bean. Finish. First, I created dynamic project, added libraries, and started creating bean class. Why I should start with bean class? No front end, no back end, no controller service. After your analysis first, right, if you get any requirement, after our analysis, we will identify entities only first. Let's say requirement is employee management system. Task, if it is given, create employee form to insert the data, employee table with the columns ID, name, email, address, salary. So immediately table need to be strike in your mind. First we should start with database table. Okay, as of now I'm not creating any database table. Via Hibernate I'll show you. So first thing, as a developer, you need to create table in database. Create table in database. Next step, you need to create poser class for it. From Java side, create poser or bean in Java. Step 3, remaining logic. What is that? Front end, then your controller, service, DAO, all the configuration stuff. Of course, you can't avoid it. Step 3, you can't avoid it. But first you need to do this. Either data JP also. Okay. After your analysis, you will find what table you required. And for that table equivalent pose or bean class you need to create. The remaining story is same. All front end, back end you need to create. You can't avoid it. So now for my requirement, I need employee poser class. First I need a table, right, as I mentioned step 1. But I'm not going to create this table. I'm avoiding it because Hibernate is going to help me in this part. So I'm not doing it. So So I need fields employee ID, private string employee name, email, address, salary. So these are the fields I require. Hereafter, you can generate getters and setters. Plus, now create mapping file to this bean. ID, name, email address you need to map to table, right? So create that mapping file here. So create one folder called resources. I am just renaming it employee.mapping file. This is pure XML approach, but in advanced, even we don't need to create this mapping. I'll give you that example also. So this employee bean is part of this package com.rbu.ems.model. Put your employee bean and what table you want. My table name is RBU employee. Okay, cool. And what fields you have? ID I have, name I have, email I have, address, and one more field, salary. Bus. And you need configuration file also. Config.xml. Same connection properties, 10 connection pool size, RK dialect. If table not exist, it will create. And what is your mapping file? Employee.hpm.xml. Okay. So I created my required POSO class, mapping file for Hibernate I created, and configuration file for Hibernate. Done. Now you can code your remaining stuff, front end, back end, all that stuff. Okay. So I'll create one insert form. Okay, form here. Index.html, employee registration form, action/registration, post method, name, email, address, and salary also I want. Okay. Just a save method I'll show you first. Register. So when you click on register, it will generate action/reg. There you need to read name, email, address, excuse me, salary values, and you need to insert it on table. And ID is not provided here. How I can do CRUD operation without ID? Usually we understand IDs will not provided by user. Need to be generated application side. So you need not to write any generator there. Just in this ID tag itself, we have configuration, primary key generator. So here you can configure auto. Bus. Automatically it will generate it for you. So we'll see how it will generate. Will it create any problem or without a problem it will function. So we are telling to Hibernate, take care of ID generation. You need not to write any code, just configuration. So I'm not supplying ID from front end. It will be generated by Hibernate only. Okay. So as soon as I click here, I need a servlet class. Registration servlet. com.rbu.ems.web. Registration servlet. So these registrations are let. Will load Spring XML file and create application context. This is for Spring purpose. And you need to read the data and call your controller service DAOs. So read data. Request to dot get parameter ID. Just a minute, we'll finish it. Okay. Okay. ID not supplying. Okay. Read name, email address, and salary also. Integer type. Integer dot parse int. Which field we need to pass? Salary. Finally, we need to save them into database. Okay, from here we need to send it to DAO. For now, we don't have controller. First, you need to put it into bean class. Okay, step by step. Keep it into employee bean and pass that employee bean to your controller to service, service to DAO, and DAO will use your session dot save and it will pass the same employee object, whichever employee object you give. Let's say employee EMP. If you pass to controller, controller will pass to service, service will pass to DAO. In DAO, you use session and give that employee object there. Bus. Finally, it will take your data to table. This much story need to happen. Shall we do this tomorrow? Okay. Controller service DAO's creation. We'll continue this tomorrow. Okay. This is again same story. Salary. Yeah. So what do you think, guys? Shall we connect tomorrow? We skipped 2 sessions this week. If we can connect, we can cover little bit content. Sorry. Yeah, yeah. So then let's connect tomorrow, okay? If you guys don't have any plans. Yeah, yeah, I will post it today. Okay. So please connect tomorrow. Maybe okay, I'll text you time. 8:30 or 9 o'clock. We'll connect 2 3 hours. Okay, we'll spend good time and we'll wind up these Hibernate examples. Plain Hibernate with the Spring given template class with annotations also. So it helps you a lot if you go through this just to 2 3 sessions which we discussing right here. So while discussing Spring Data JPA, you feel nothing. Okay, I know how it is functioning internally. That much confidence you will get. Okay. Otherwise, I might have skipped it and directly shown you that, but you can't understand the internal flavor of it. Okay. Yeah. So let's connect tomorrow and we'll wind up. And from Monday we can start with MVC. 1 2 examples I'll cover in MVC. Then we will start the more important concepts like Spring Boot microservices. Okay. Yeah. I'll share all the links. Okay. Videos as well as this Hibernate material and the videos link for Hibernate. Okay. I'll update. Thank you guys. See you tomorrow. I'll text you the time. Okay. Good day, guys.